Hello, this is John Aker, call sign Nomad. This is my YouTube channel. The top line of the splash screen is their YouTube is calling a handle, part of the URL to find this channel, youtube.com/@ John Aker, aviating author. And note the dots, the periods between the last four words. That forms the handle. This introduction is the first of more than a dozen videos that I generated that follow my autobiography, recollections, my life in and out of the military. And they will represent planes I flew during the 18 years of active flying status I was on during my 20-year military career as a United States Air Force pilot. I found software that runs in the computer flight simulator world, matching airplanes that I flew in real life. And I narrate them with a narrative stream of consciousness, stories of what was happening in my life during the times when I flew those airplanes. And, well, they're war stories, you know, of course. And in war stories, you have to be careful because the first liar ain't got a chance. You'll learn a little bit about computer flight simulators and videos, the equipment I use to get it done, and we'll have some fun. And check your six back there. I might be on your tail. Nomad is back. Let's take a look at the rest of this series.
I departed Foster Air Force Base. My short-lived career as a fighter pilot having reached its conclusion, and I was on my way to Strategic Air Command as a supply officer. That dictated about a 6-week course in Air Force supply at Amarillo Air Force Base, a rather useless course because SAC did not use the procedures taught by the Air Force. They had their own supply system. So I used these, actually generated two videos regarding Amarillo. I was getting my flying time in the back seat of a T-28, the Trojan from the training days of previous videos mentioned. And I managed to teach a couple of pilots some tricks about air combat maneuvering. So I'll use these next two videos and we'll talk about that and have a little fun in the air.
Welcome back into the cockpit. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad, coming to you from Amarillo Air Force Base, Texas. That's almost up into the Texas Panhandle. Amarillo is no longer an Air Force base. It's been turned over to the civilians and has become the Rick Husband Amarillo International Airport. The elevation around here is 3,600 feet, so take that into account when you're letting down. I'm here to continue as a desk jockey. I'm at Supply Officers School, a school I didn't ask to come to, but my next orders are sending me to a supply officer slot, so I'm here. On the way into town, on a east-west highway into Amarillo, I looked up ahead and there were trees lining the north side of the highway, and they were all bent over towards the south. And I thought, well, the wind doesn't feel that strong, it's not buffeting the car much, so I pulled over to the side of the road, stopped, got out, and it was dead calm. But the prevailing winds are out of the north around this part of Texas, and they're so prevalent, the trees grow bent over. While I was here, my roommate, I was staying in the bachelor officers' quarters because my wife and our daughter were back in Indiana. And my roommate was a golfer, and he went out and played a few holes, came back, and he told me they had, instead of grass greens, they had sand greens, and you had to play the wind on the greens. So that was a pain. Actually, this supply officer school was going to be a waste of time. They were going to spend a couple of months while I was here teaching me how the U.S. Air Force managed their supply program, while I was headed to a strategic air command base that and SAC used their own method of supply, keeping track of supplies and equipment. So while there's not much to talk about except one airplane and some time I spent in the back seat getting flying time, enough hours for flying time, I thought this might be a good time to talk to you about ACM, Air Combat Maneuvering. This is a pretty good little airplane for throwing her around the sky. ACM, Air Combat Maneuvering, is what you need to know if you want to go out and dogfight. You get into a fur ball, you better have some tricks up your sleeve. Today they call it BFM, Basic Flight Maneuvering. And this is up close and personal. Guns, short-range missiles. If you're over the horizon, as a lot of the combat is today, BVR, beyond visual range, you just sit there and watch your scopes in the cockpit and pickle one off and hope it hits. This is down and dirty. So I'm going to demonstrate a few maneuvers in the T-28 today. Let's close that canopy up. This is a single engine, two-seat tandem. The rear seat in this plane is not being occupied at the moment. Tricycle landing gear. Jump back into the cockpit and take a look in here, see what's going on. The first time I mentioned the T-28 was at Bartow Air Base in Florida at primary flying school. We were flying the T-6s and it was being replaced by the T-28. Pretty good airplane, but Navy got a hold of some. This T-28 in the Air Force had an 800 horsepower engine and a two-bladed prop. The Navy got a hold of it and they boosted the engine power up to 1,400 horsepower, hung a three-bladed prop on her, put a hook on the tail, and sent them out to practice carrier landings. T-28 also got some combat workouts in Vietnam. So let's see if we can get her off the ground. I just released the parking brakes, put full power on her, and we don't get a whole lot of torque out of the engine to drag us off center. Airspeed needle's alive. We're up to 50 knots, and we're rolling right along. There's 100 knots. Okay, that should be enough to get her off the ground. Let's bring the nose up on the rotate. Let's clean her up and bring the gear up. Let's bring the flaps up. Piper Cherokee up there off the nose, about 11 o'clock, I guess it is. I'm going to head down south. There's some desolate land, and we can play around down there for a while. let's talk while we're just eating up time here. Headed down toward an area called Paladuro Canyon. It's about 30 miles southeast, as I recall, of Amarillo. So it won't take us too long to get there. Let's get back to some of that air combat maneuvering. And goes back to World War I, World War II, some big advances in Korea, and even bigger ones. Flying jets high, way up there in the stratosphere. Okay, there's, as you're coming in on, let's say I'm on a pursuit curve. Let me pause it here for a moment. On a pursuit curve after a bandito down there, let's say he's above this airport somewhere in here. If my nose is pointed behind him, it's called lag pursuit. If my nose is pointed at him, it's pure pursuit. Pure pursuit. And if my nose is in front of him, it's lead pursuit. Now there may come a time, let's unpause this, when it's handy to use that lead pursuit, especially with fixed sights. You put the nose and the gun sight pipper out in front of him, and you're trying to aim at a point where he's going to be when the bullets get there. Obviously the best is pure pursuit from his 6 o'clock. You got him locked and you're coming up his tailpipe or right up his elevators. Is a maneuver called the Lufberry Circle, named for Raoul Lufberry, was a Frenchman in the Army Air Corps and went to Europe as part of the Lafayette Escadrille. The idea was to get into a tight turn and out-turn your opponent until you came up on his backside. That worked for the inexperienced. But there were a number of ways to defeat the Lufberry, and it was out of favor pretty much by World War II. Let's get back in the cockpit here and let's demonstrate one of those on the way down here. And all we're going to do is roll her up into the tightest turn we can manage in our particular airframe, and we're going to come around here. And notice it's in the level. It's in the horizontal plane. And that's all we're doing. We're turning, trying to turn inside the opponent. Get on his tail. Okay. We're going to roll out there and take a second here, pause this, and give us a chance to look at that maneuver. An instant replay. So let's get outside into a tight turn, as tight as we can handle, as many G's as we can pull. So there's not much to it. It's, as I said, the horizontal plane, and that's all you're working with. So we'll talk about the ins and outs and the goods and the bads of the Lufberry Circle a little later on. Okay, we're back into the sim in real life. And one of the ways to defeat it or gain an advantage in the Lufberry Circle is by using yo-yos. High yo-yo, low yo-yo. If you're overtaking and you've got the speed, you go into high yo-yo, you trade your airspeed for altitude, and the low yo-yo is just the opposite. You You don't have airspeed, but you've got altitude you can give up. So you drop the nose, go after them, come back up. You've lost some of that altitude, but you've gained some airspeed as you're coming back up on him. One of the problems with unless you're in a left-right circle with an inexperienced pilot, they're probably going to pull something on you to get out of it. So if you're in one and you haven't gained the advantage inside of a couple of turns, it's time to go balls to the wall and get the hell out of Dodge. Better to give up a fight and fight another day than to look back and see that other guy on your tail. Okay, there's another I don't have any good ones here, so I'm going to pause here, and I'm actually going to load another flight that'll get us down into the area a little quicker. So we're going to pause. Okay, we're down in this is Paladero Canyon. Actually, in real life, the landscape here was pretty darn flat, and the canyon was actually like it was gouged out of the earth. Native Americans lived and fought from there, and half the time the cavalry could never find them because they were down in the canyon until they came out to put some hurt on folks. Okay, we're looking for a little airfield down here. Why, there it is. Isn't that amazing? All right. I'm going to set up here, and I'm going to pause for a moment and set up a demonstration for a barrel roll. Let's say that we're in a pursuit curve for a hostile that's right about here. Let's say just a little above that tower, antenna tower out there. And all of a sudden, we see he is growing large in our windscreen. We're coming in way too fast. We're going to overshoot him. He's in a curve here. We're going to overshoot him because we've got too much airspeed. We're going to end up out here in front of him. And what does that leave him? A clean shot at our 6. So what can we do to counter that? What we're going to do is do a barrel roll the opposite direction of our pursuit curve. Whoa, we just realized that using up some airspace and rolling out right on his 6 again. And now let's come around here. So we're headed south. The heading indicator is top row, center of it, and it says we're going south. The arrowhead is at the bottom. We've got north, center at the top. I'm going to demonstrate an Emmelmann turn. Emmelmann's first name was Max, and if he sounds like he was a German, he was. Apparently in those days they liked to use a loop as an escape maneuver. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pull back around to the north so I don't lose my landmarks here. And apparently loops would throw them off. Then the guys got smarter than that, and Max says, well, I'll throw a curve at him. I'll pull her up. We'll make like we're doing a loop. And right up on top, I'm going to roll out. Hopefully just suck it on through. Okay, here we go. Headed north. Duck the nose and get a little more airspeed on there. So what we want to do is start the nose up. Try to keep her straight. Watch that turn needle. Okay, let's watch up here, because what we want to see is the horizon coming over there. And let's pause there and see what we've got here on the instruments. Well, I missed it by about 30 degrees. We lost about 80 knots. I should have been going this way, and I'm going this way. So it wasn't quite a good element, but let's take it. Depending on the airplane and the element turn, you could expect, in the T28, you could expect about 1,500 feet gain in altitude going up there. Of course, it's going to depend on your airframe and your engine. And what's a chandelle? It's more of a practice maneuver, and it's even taught by the FAA. It's a maximum performance climbing 180-degree turn. So we're at 7,000 feet. And I'm headed south. That needle on the heading indicators at the bottom of the case. So we're going to roll into about a 45-degree bank, haul back on the stick, come around, an eye on that heading indicator, halfway through it, 45 degrees to roll out, and roll out heading northbound. There we go. Okay, let's pause and see what we did. We started at 7,000 feet, and we gained about 1,700 feet in that maneuver. And while we're up here, we've got a little altitude. I'll show you a split S. Split S is a reverse of the implement. Okay, let's see. So we are heading back to north. So instead of climbing, we're going to dive. It's another way to exit an area quickly. Lose altitude, gain airspeed, and leave the area the opposite direction. There we are at, let's take her down to 9,000 feet for a starting point here. And we've got about 150 knots. And we decide it's time to get out of Dodge. Roller inverted, stick only. Pull back on the stick, take power off. If you're close, especially if you're close to the ground. But you want the power back on when you're coming out the bottom, so you're exiting the area at max speed. And we do 6,500 feet from 9. About 2,500 feet we lost in that. If you enjoyed some of this material, you might reach up there and click that like button. Want to come back, hit the subscribe to this channel. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad. Flying flight simulators based on my career as a U.S. Air Force pilot.